Welcome back, everybody. I hope you really enjoyed that first session. We've got another great session coming up now, which I'll introduce. The next event that we have is the Future Proofing Destination Success panel session. This session brings together a range of perspectives from operators to local government to explore what will define a successful destination over the next 10 to 20 years. While sustainability is central to the discussion, the session will focus not only on the why, but more importantly on the what next. What emerging customer expectations, operational models and community needs will shape the future of destinations and experiences. We have here today Dr Meredith Wray, a member of our board who will chair this session. Meredith is a Director of Destination North Coast, an academic and a consultant expert in sustainable tourism research, policy and planning. Meredith brings a strong track record in tourism research, stakeholder engagement and strategic and collaborative tourism planning for governments, tourism organisations and industry stakeholders to the Destination North Coast Board. Her understanding and interest in regional tourism is founded on her PhD studies and research in sustainable tourism policy and planning. And with Meredith, we've got a great cast here today, but I'll hand it over to Meredith to run this session. Thank you.
Hi everyone and welcome to Byron Bay. Familiar faces out there that I can't actually see many of, but hello to those people I know. And given everyone else has said their little story about coming to Byron, I came here 39 years ago and within 3 weeks I was pregnant with my first child. So there's something about the water here. Unfortunately, we've just got a bit of a technical glitch. I have the bios for our speakers on my phone and Michael's just getting that for me. But I'll tell you, while I'm waiting to introduce you to our panellists, I'll just explain how this session is going to run. So Stewart from Earthcheck is going to do an introductory session around the travel trends, the global trends in 2025. Following this, I'll be asking our panellists questions and we've pre-prepared questions and they will respond. We'll do that for a certain amount of time. Then I'm going to open it up to the floor to get you guys to ask each of the panellists a question. And the way that we'll run that is I'll say, well, we'll start with questions for Sarah, we'll go to Pascale, then we'll go to Stewart. Michael, have you got the bios? Yeah, it's gone. I can wing it. So, I don't have the script, but we can wing this. Stewart Moore is CEO and founder of Earthcheck. Here we go. Thank you. I've known Stewart for over 20 years. When I started my PhD, I met Stewart and I was a bit scared of his awesome knowledge. So Stewart is one of the Asia Pacific's most experienced planning and management consultants. He has over 30 years of experience in a wide range of disciplines, from business and strategic planning, policy development, tourism destination management and marketing, sustainability, risk management and corporate and social responsibility. Now that's a lot, Stewart. We'd also like to welcome Sarah Ndiaye, our Mayor. I've also known Sarah for quite a long time as well. Sarah is the Mayor of Byron Shire and has been a dedicated member of the local community for over 30 years. A passionate supporter of the ocean, environment and regenerative agriculture, she works tirelessly to protect the Shire's natural beauty and vibrant community. In a region known for both its ecological sensitivity and tourism pressures, she continues to champion sustainable tourism planning, balancing the needs of residents and visitors while striving to secure a resilient and climate-adaptive future for the Byron Shire. So thank you, Sarah, for joining us. Pascale, I hadn't met before, we met last week. Pascale is from Crystalbrook, Byron. She is a strategic destination marketer with a focus on regional tourism and data-led brand growth. Based in Byron Bay, she leads marketing for Crystalbrook and Crystalbrook Vincent, using guest insight and behavioural data to shape commercial strategy elevate guest experience and drive loyalty. Pascale brings over a decade of experience in hotel and resort marketing with a background in brand launches, spa and wellness, and content strategy. She's deeply passionate about the Northern Rivers region, and aren't we all? And its potential to grow through thoughtful, sustainable and experience-led tourism. So welcome, Pascale. So I think you'll see from our three panellists today, we've got a range of experience from consultancy and global sustainability accreditation through to the local government and planning and so on, and then a good example of an operator involved in sustainability. So I'm now going to hand over to Stewart and to present about global trends. Thanks, Stewart.
Can I just say it's an absolute pleasure to be here today. I've had the privilege to be able to work with Michael and Sandy for a long period of time, and I really enjoyed the presentation this morning as well as Mark's presentation, and I think we could have thrown a lot more questions at Mark. I had a few up my sleeve for him. I've got 10 minutes. It's going to be a little bit like lightning chess if you've ever played it, so we're going to move pretty quickly. What I'd like to do is just walk you through three key issues and then throw some curveballs at the end just to get some thinking going. So I guess in the first instance, I'd like to look at, just to briefly explain what we do overseas. We've been in market for 35 years across the world in sustainable tourism. Just to give you some context on some of the case studies that I'm going to present today. Now, having listened to the presentation this morning from Michael, we can learn, a lot of people can learn from what you're doing. It's not just about what you can see that's happening elsewhere in the world, but we can always do it better. And I think there's no silver bullet, but there's lots we can learn and take forward, and part of today is putting that onto the table. We'll look at global trends for tourism and destinations, and it won't surprise you that many of these trends have been percolating along for the last 10 years, but they're coming of age, and there's a number of reasons why that's happening, which we'll discuss. We'll finish with some case studies, I think, and that's in the last minute and a half, just to throw at you what other people are doing and also what you can learn from them and vice versa, because I think it's about conversations both ways, and then a few curveballs on the whole context of over-tourism and how that can be managed or taken forward. So look, Earthcheck is a global business advisory group. We've been in market for actually over 35 years. We specialise in destination management and everything to do with planning for, as best you can, climate change and decarbonisation. We now service clients in over 70 countries across the world, across 32 sectors, so we're holistic. We look at the brown bits and the green bits because that's how the visitor economy works, but particularly with destinations. The other key thing is, I guess, is the essence of being holistic. So it's always been about community lift from the bottom. Being really clear. All the case studies that I present to you today are about communities determining how they see the future. It's also about strategic planning, top down. They both have to go in unison together, but the key lesson there is it's a cross-sectoral action we need. You can't do it alone in tourism. It's not just about marketing and it's not just about demand. Every part of the economy needs to work together and be part of the discussion. Some really good examples from Noosa, who've just gone through their strategic plan with Earthcheck that I think we should share today if we get a chance. It's also about business support. Sandy talked about it today. If 90% of us are SMEs, it's all about supporting people to come together, often working in clusters. We can do a little bit more collaboration. Mark talked about that. It's also about good design about the fabric of our buildings and our infrastructure. Earthcheck has a building and design standard and the design of our products and services moving forward. They all have to come together. So let's have a look at the global trends. The reality is you're living with them now. So I'm not going to introduce too much more that you wouldn't be already aware of, but how we travel, live, work and play is in transition. It has been in transition, particularly since COVID. The future in many respects has arrived. This afternoon you'll hear from Liz. And I spoke to Liz this morning about the whole context of accelerating technologies and AI. I've got one of our members of the team in Korea at the moment at an AI conference. I mean, I didn't sleep last night when she was walking me through all the sorts of things that are happening with AI in terms of distribution and marketing platforms and how that's going to change the industry for good and for bad that we need to get together with. And also, and some of the case studies for destinations, how they're using AI to manage behaviour, to track, map visitors in the economy. Some really exciting things. We're in the low carbon economy. Sometimes mightn't feel like it, but the reality is 3 years ago, I wouldn't have even used or mentioned ESG reporting. E is environmental reporting, the S is social reporting. We don't do particularly well in the G is governance. The implication is that it's not just coming from the broader economy, it's coming from the financial sector. So your banking system, your superannuation companies and the world share markets are all using ESG in terms of their business practices. So the reality is, in Australia, as of the 1st of January this year, has introduced climate change reporting. It's not coming, it's here. Sandy talked about it. We need to get on top of that because we are all part of that supply chain. The 1st of January means over the next 18 months, sooner or later, someone's going to come knocking at our door in the context of reporting about carbon and the whole context of the footprint we have in industry. It is about localism. The whole context about sense of place, precinct activation, the essence about the experience economy that we heard about this morning, and connection to place. So what came out of COVID? Well, out of COVID, we actually came out of it and we actually need to be reconnected in many instances with ourselves, with our families and friends who we hadn't seen for a long period of time. But when people travel, they want to be connected with place and people in a sustainable fashion. It's all really a part of the experience economy, which we did talk about this morning. Climate change and extreme weather events need to be managed. We need to adapt. It needs to become part of our destination management plans and our infrastructure. I've just flew back from Spain last Thursday evening and it was 33 degrees at night. It was 45 during the day. And the whole economy is reconsidering how they're going to manage that economy. The whole context of cool vacations have started coming up right across Europe. So this is coming our way and we need to be in front of it. Social licence has always been with us, but I think it's probably with us more than now. And I'll walk you through the whole context about the role of not just community, but keeping us all honest in terms of what we're delivering. And you've already heard about the health and wellbeing economy. Such a big part of it. Very simply, it's about healthy people, healthy buildings, living in healthy precincts and communities. That's actually sustainability in very short language. And it's also about regenerative practices. I'll walk you through that very, very quickly, but in the context of regenerative, what does it mean? It means you're giving back, you're not taking away. It's restorative, and we'll open that discussion up a little bit in a moment. I'm not even going to go through the data because I think Sandy did that very well, but the data is reconfirming expectations of visitors when they travel and the ability to be part of the solution. Some really exciting things happening in the data as we move forward. The other thing is, if we talked about sustainability, the science is moving, but I can promise you the fundamentals have not changed in 35 years since the Rio Earth Summit. We know what we need to be doing, but the difference is it's now much more about science-based targets. It is about data and performance. I talked about climate change and social licence, about net positive impact. So it is really important we understand you can't manage what you don't measure as you move forward. And the other thing is about your consumer market. So many years ago, it was superficial. I've used the word social vigilantes there because they are going to keep us very honest in the context of when they travel, we need to be delivering in terms of where they're staying and what we're eating and how they're travelling in the local economy. I think sustainability is no longer about less harm, it's about being more good, hence the discussion on regenerative tourism. So what would it look like, for example, if I was a hotel in a city environment and I was looking at energy, I would be giving energy back to the grid, not taking energy from it. I would be net zero in the context of our waste. I would be connecting with the community, so you can start seeing it's more restorative and giving back and not taking away, which traditionally tourism has been about. So every part of the economy needs to be part of this discussion. That's the power of clusters and precincts and collaboration, everyone working together. And that's a key part of what local government is. All parts of industry need to be talking with each other and supporting each other. From a climate change perspective and weather events, there's so much work being done on this. We prepared the risk and resilience strategy for the Australian government. It's on the Earthcheck website. Peel it off because it's got all the issues on how do you understand risk, how do you factor in management, and how does that take forward an adaptation of how you design and manage your operations moving forward. But it's not going to go away and we need to be on top of it. From a health check perspective, what would it look like? Well, presumably it's about travelling for good, sustainably. It's about staying for good. You'd go to Crystalbrook. It's about eating for good. I've just come back from one of the biggest conference centres in the world. They talked about vegetarian eating. I could speak to that half the day because I'm not a vegetarian, but the reality is that's where the whole market's moving to, responsibility. It's about responsible retail, gifting for good in terms of local products and services, and building for good. That's in fact what we should be looking at. So, what can we learn from other destinations? In the last minute and a half I've got, I do love a good pledge, and pledges actually have a call to action. They bring people together. As an economy, it's not just about the operators and community, it's about the visitors saying, yeah, I'll be a part of that. I think there's some really good things we can do with that. The reality is it's about community-driven outcomes. It wouldn't matter whether I was talking about Icelandic communities, and I've been working for 20 years, or County Clare and Ireland. It's a community driving this forward, but you have to listen to them. It's about data. Data and measurement are mission critical, and Sandy has already given you some context about how you start that journey. Just start moving forward in terms of your footprint. It's about also tech-enabled sustainability. So again, you'll hear from that, Liz, this afternoon, but the tech-enabled stuff, as of the conference yesterday in Korea, was about using tech in a smart way and behavioural change, particularly in the context of mapping and tracking visitors in our economy, and behaviour change. We won't talk about Cope and Pay, but I love some of the examples they're using in Europe. Cope and Pay is in fact incentivising visitors to do the right thing when they're in a destination. Okay, not going to do Finland, but I'll finish with over-tourism. So ultimately, we're crossing the line, okay, however defined in terms of either volume or the comfort we have as a local community. And the reality is this is what we're doing, or people are doing overseas. They're managing time and space, but particularly through hard, soft and warm infrastructure. Warm infrastructure is people. Shout out to the Visitor Information Centre I met on the way in, because everyone needs to play a part in communicating who we are and what we do. It's about dispersing visitors. Michael talked about that this morning. You're already doing that very well, but it doesn't happen overnight. We've been working on the Great Atlantic Way in Ireland for 3 years. It's an 8-year project, you know, and it's slowly picking up speed as communities come on board, just as you are if you're rail. It's about promoting alternative sites, using price. Price is a very powerful mechanism moving forward, and it's about modifying behaviour and expectations, which you can do, and visitors are open for that discussion. So to conclude, it's a bit of a carrot and stick. I love the carrot, that's incentivising people. Crystalbrook incentivises their guests about how to be a bit more responsible in terms of energy and waste, but it's also about the stick. I'm all for the stick too. When I travel, if I do the wrong thing, I pay my way. Paying my way is not an issue as far as I'm concerned, but we can open up that discussion. And it's also about making sure that the economy actually has money to reinvest in itself. So I guess to conclude, so this is the moment of truth for you all as we go through and you leave the forum tomorrow is, so what business are you in? You need to be really clear about what are your outcomes, what are the expectations, what are the goals and principles. Noosa can share a lot to you about where they've gone on this and how are you going to measure that. So in 5 years we can be here and you can say, not happy, Jan, or no, we've done really well and we've got options to improve. You've really got to understand what your end game is. That's in terms of the Chinese think in 20-year plans. This time we started to think the same way. All communities and destinations that I visit, they have a heartbeat. So I guess you've just got to ask yourself, are you listening to yours and what is it telling you?
Thanks, Stewart. That was a great 10-minute overview of different trends, sustainable tourism, best practice, and what we need to think about into the future. So we are talking about future-proofing for destination success in sustainability. So my questions to the panel are around that theme, but each will have their different perspectives. So I'm going to start off with Sarah. Sarah, looking globally, Byron Shire is a high-profile example of a destination under pressure. Perhaps we've been and that ebbs and flows. From your perspective, what role should government play, and what does a community-aligned approach to tourism look like?
Thanks, Meredith. I feel like Byron Shires, as I said earlier, had a real love-hate relationship with the visitor economy, and that has been expressed very deeply in the last few years, where we now have a 60-day cap on Airbnbs, because at its height we had over 4,000 of our 15,000 residential properties available all year. Obviously, that would be a controversial conversation in this room about whether that's a good or a bad thing. But I think that heartbeat sits with the people that live here. And if the people that live here can't, well, then you have a problem. And so trying to find that balance is a really good first step, and we'll see over the next 12 to 18 months how that unfolds. I've just been lucky enough to go travelling as well, and I think the climate issue is front and centre for us. We've gone through the floods, and I remember being in a chat recently. They talked about how in the past they used to plan for one major event in the country per year. So far this year we've had 26. So we're looking at a very different and changing environment. How do we, as a local government area, as a regional area, plan for the visitor experience in those changing conditions when you have 100 days of rain? How do we make wayfinding easier if there is a problem? How, recently in Athens, they had to close the whole city, every monument between 11 a.m. and 5 p.m. because the heat was so extreme. So if we're going to talk about future-proofing, we have to talk about how we look after how resilient we can make this community and how we can make that accessible. Because when you think about the visitor experience, everything that a visitor needs, access to shops and transport and beautiful things, and they're all the same things that a resident needs, but a visitor's always going to have more money to spend on them because they're only here for a week or two. So if we can somehow find a way, like we have, say, with pay parking, where some of that money that's coming in from those visitors is being reinvested into the local infrastructure to help support the community that lives here, I think that's a part of the way forward. One other example that I saw while travelling, which I think is I'm really interested in exploring, is in Florence. None of the food stores are allowed to have food that's not from the region. Now, we're looking at a streetscape here. I don't think anyone comes to Byron to shop at Jag or, an international store, but we're losing, just because of the sheer price of the area, our local content on our streetscape. But also, so what could we do to help incentivise and support local agriculture and businesses by incentivising a level of produce that needs to be included? And how would that work in, and I know places like Crystalbrook and the farm, and there's some other great examples of people that are pioneering in this space, but how do we build that into planning somehow? I'm interested in exploring that. I don't know the answer, and that's why I'm really excited to have so many people that know more than me about this, but that's one place I think we could look at. In 20 years' time, are we just going to be seeing the same stuff we see everywhere, like I saw in Bologna, which isn't very close, or in Florence, where everything is centred around that experience of being there, and that place is front and centre, and the people are front and centre?
Yeah. Thanks, Sarah. I was just reflecting then, I watch Escape to the Country, in the UK, but I noticed what they actually talk about the towns and villages where people may want to move to is having independent shops. And I don't think we have those conversations or even that jargon yet about independent shops. So that's just my view. So thanks, Sarah. I think it's really great that we have the Mayor here in the room talking to us about thinking about the future. So thanks, Sarah. So over to you, Pascale. How does Crystalbrook track evolving customer expectations, and can you share an example of a product or service innovation that came directly from consumer insights?
Yeah, thanks, Meredith. So, excuse me, I think I've got the cough that everyone seems to be battling with. We've been working on a guest insight ecosystem essentially for the last year. It's called a Net Promoter Score. And what we've been doing is moving away from, the passive sort of Google or TripAdvisor feedback and responses to this Net Promoter Score system. What it does is it taps into guests who have stayed with us, asks for their feedback, and we use that feedback then to evolve and develop our strategy, our marketing, and where we're putting our capital investment into. The Net Promoter Score is a bit more of a private platform versus, a TripAdvisor or a Google, and what we've seen from that is that the response rate that comes through versus, your normal Google responses goes up from about 17% to an 80%. And then we can overlay those responses in, again, what we're doing. So, for example, Crystalbrook has been in place for about 5 years in the region. We have an evolving food and beverage concept that started about 5 years, and we've had to shift quite dramatically over the last few years. We've been able to take those NPS scores and feedback and move that into something that our guests really want, and then overlay that with working with the likes of Earthcheck. So we're Earthcheck certified silver, and we can then use something like NPS, take that guest feedback that's coming directly through to us, and overlay it with our Earthcheck standards, and take something that could be, as simple as, where are we sourcing our local scallops? Who's working in the restaurant? What are we doing from a recycling standpoint? And marry those together. And that's been really something that we've been working on over the last year in terms of, the whole resort, but, our food and beverage concept in particular.
So there's a really strategic approach to, number one, gather the right data, or as much as you can, and then consider how you build it in within the accreditation framework as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we take that feedback and we use it in a way to respond and market to our guests. So we have a loyalty program called The Crowd, and we've now been able to marry that crowd data with our NPS data. So everybody who's part of this crowd program will get, they'll be on a personalised marketing journey, essentially. But when we're getting, let's say, detractors coming through from NPS, we know, okay, we're not going to send them, we're not going to push certain offers to them, we're not going to send them out certain information. And then we can use that crowd data to sort of say, okay, these are our most loyal guests, we know they spend an average of $350 more than, a non-crowd member. What does that look like? How are we marketing to them? How are we talking to them? And that will then shape and evolve our strategy moving forward.
And I suppose then you get more aligned visitors, don't you? The ones who are in the crowd program
absolutely.
Are the type of visitors we want.
Yeah, absolutely. That active listening and engagement that we're able to do through the likes of our NPS, which again, when you're working with just a Google platform where a guest is not necessarily using, their real name, or they're not providing, full context or scope, versus NPS, it becomes a lot more personalised, and then you start to build a real relationship with those people. And again, that results in, higher spend, longer stays, and booking further out in advance, and it starts to really build that loyalty within our guests.
Yeah, great. Thank you for explaining that. So back to you, Stewart. I'm going to ask you, what methodologies does Earthcheck use to assess a destination's sustainability performance, and how can these tools support long-term planning and investment? Because I think that we talk about accreditation and achieving performance, and Crystalbrook is actually implementing, but what are those methodologies?
Yeah, it's not surprising. They've all been built off Agenda 21. That's where the whole context of sustainable outcomes came from. So in terms of your footprint, it won't surprise you. You've got to look at energy and all the context of energy and how that's used, scopes 1, 2 and 3. This day and age, it's about greenhouse gas emissions, so it's actually helping people understand what's that footprint. Water is probably still the biggest issue facing our planet. We're, other than Antarctica, Australia, it's one of the driest places on Earth. So we're really key looking at all forms of how water is used. Waste is something that tourism specialises in creating. We do a lot of waste. So a lot of it is looking at all the waste right across both from a destination perspective, but also from an operational perspective, and more particularly how that's managed. The circular economy forms a part about that, and that's your whole supply chain. So we're really interested then in looking at how is that supply chain being engaged. There are a whole range of then micro issues. Paper, pesticides, we're really looking at everything you're using in terms of holding your operation together. And not surprisingly, it's about community. It's about, and that's the S in the ESG. So traditionally, we're very good at looking at shareholders. The S is about looking at stakeholders, your staff, your community, your supply chain and everyone you work with, which we traditionally haven't done that very well. So a lot of it is also looking at the core elements, including all the normal things you'd expect from a workforce program in terms of gender equity and fairness of pay. The other thing we do incorporate is, because it's not all about science, it's about community and the operator, optional indicators. So what's important to your operation? Is it about training your staff? We work in North Queensland, it's about cassowary protection. We work in New Zealand, it's about number of car accidents. So these are really important things to those communities. So we should be tracking everything. So half the battle of the Earthcheck platform, it's online, it gives you an ability to provide a baseline, which is your data, and it allows you then to track that, to understand how to improve, and also to celebrate. The presentation I gave in Spain was simply one thing, saying to them, if it feels like compliance, we have lost. It is not about compliance, it's about celebration. This is about us looking after the planet, looking after place, and looking after the future of our kids. So we've got to turn the discussion to a real positive, and one of the things that the Earthcheck program asks for is, how are you communicating this internally, and how are you communicating this to your community to bring them on board? So communication's really important.
Yeah, thanks for explaining that, Stewart. And for anyone who's interested, I'd corner Stewart at lunch and talk about the process, which can be tailor-made for destinations and businesses as well. So my understanding, it's not a one-stop shop. It's like considering the context for every destination and business. I'm going back to Sarah. Sarah, how can tourism be part of the solution, not the problem, when it comes to infrastructure and environmental pressures in regional communities?
Well, I guess I touched on that a little bit in the last response